So in our list of dependencies here for packages, I can see that I've added Entity Framework Core Design and Tools. I'm also going to go ahead and add the base Microsoft Entity Framework Core, which should be added to our web project. And I'm going to add another project while we're in here for working with JSON. And the most popular project in the .NET ecosystem for that is Newtonsoft JSON. So we should be able to find Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.MVC.Newtonsoft JSON. This is going to provide us with some tools for things like formatting and serializing the JSON responses that we're working with in our web API. And likewise, there is the base Newtonsoft.json project, which I'm going to add to the project as well. Okay, with that added, we can actually head back to the terminal and we'll run the commands to create our first migration. So to make this work, we actually need to change directories into our data project. Remember, this is the project that's actually connecting to our database, and then we need to run this command .NET-EF. We'll pass it this flag startup project, and then we'll point that to our web project. So from here we'd go up a directory into solarcoffee.web, and then we run the command migrations, add, and then a name for the migration, which I'm just going to call initial migration here. Once that's complete, you should see done here. If you do get errors when you try to run this command, again, make sure that you're trying to run it from the data project, and that for the flag startup project, we're pointing to our web project, and that you have the various packages that we went through and installed here, installed in the web project. So what this has done is in our data project now, you should see a directory called migrations, and in this, we have some auto-generated code, which actually runs commands using this migration builder object, which does things like creates tables for us, and you can see that it's creating some of our identity tables. We're also creating various indexes on these. And then we have this snapshot file. So we don't need to worry about really editing anything in these migrations yet, although it is totally possible to manually edit these files depending on your specific needs. But for the duration of this project, we're really just going to be using the migrations that Entity Framework Core builds for us, and it's actually kind of a nice utility. It would be a pretty long process and potentially more error prone to actually create any of these migrations by hand. So now to actually run the migrations, we have to run another command. Again, we run this startup project flag using .NET-EF, solarcoffee.web, and we need to run the command database update. So now what's happening is the Entity Framework Core is going to be looking in our web project, and it looks like we have an error here, so we'll go ahead and update that in just a moment. But what it should be doing is looking at our connection string and actually connecting to the instance of Postgres and then updating our tables. So since we have an argument exception here, keyword not supported, password, solar123, database, all right, let's go ahead and fix that. And the problem is we have a colon here instead of an equal sign. So just like I mentioned, if you mess up the syntax for the connection string here, it's very unforgiving, as it should be, and I had a typo here. Make sure that anytime we have this sort of key value pair syntax separated by semicolons, that we are associating keys with values using the equal sign and not a colon. So if we head back to our terminal now and I run the same command again, we should have no problems. And you can see that it says done. And what this has actually done now, as I mentioned, is it's connected to our database, run those migrations that are defined in code, and created the various tables and relations in our SQL database for us. If we want to take a look at it from pSQL, then we can just go straight in. And again, I'm going to change users to solardev. And if I run the command \DT, This is actually going to give us a list of our relations. We can see a number of tables here which are related to Entity Framework identity, which gives us things like users and roles and user claims out of the box. We also have the tables that we've created here, or models that we've defined, and then Entity Framework has created tables for us in customers and customer addresses. There's also this sort of table containing metadata about migrations history, which starts with a double underscore. Entity Framework is also managing that table for us. So if I select star from customer addresses. Now, one thing to keep in mind with Postgres anyway, and SQL in general, that if we don't surround our table names with double quotes here, it's actually just going to interpret that as case-insensitive customer addresses, and it will say it won't find the relation. So if we surround it in quotes and use the proper casing here, then we should be able to select from our table. Now, obviously, we don't have any data in this yet, but just to take a look at the types of tables it constructed, let's select star from customers here. And if you take a look at what's going on here, we have our customer table, which has a column for all the properties we created, plus this column primary address ID. And there's a foreign key from primary address ID here to customer addresses ID. And so that's kind of how we establish the relationships. Again, if you recall back in our data models, customer here has this customer address type on it, and so Entity Framework has done the work to create that foreign key relationship and the data layer, as you see here. All right, in the next video, we're going to go through and actually complete the definition of the models in our data layer.